Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, brought to you by GO-Biz Clean Energy Permitting, or the GO-Biz, which is the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. And it's on the topic of the Clean Energy Permitting Initiative, where you'll be seeing some early elements of the Playbook and Toolkit that they have been working on. My name is Amanda Bomar, and I'm here to support with the Q&A. And just in case you're looking, we don't have the features enabled today for the Q&A within the platform itself, but instead on this slide you'll see there's a website which I'm asking you all to write down now or snap a picture of this QR code at this time for when you do have questions. It's an MS Forms, which should not be prevented through firewalls that many agencies seem to have these days. So please take a picture of that or write down this address, which is https://tinyurl.com/energy-unit. I'm going to give everybody a second to grab your phone and take a picture. We'll have this slide later on in the deck as well to remind you about Q&A. Right. I think everybody's had a chance to take the picture. And so now I would like to pass over the presentation to Christina Hironaka, who's the Senior Advisory for Energy out of the Office of California Governor Newsom. If you want to change the next slide, please. Oh, first, I'll go through the agenda. Apologies. So welcome, everybody. Here's an overview of, Christine's going to provide an overview of the Clean Energy Permitting Initiative. And then you're going to hear about findings, the permitting barriers and potential accelerators, and the tools that are in development right now. And we'll share kind of an early look at what the GO-Biz website and playbook are going to look like. And then we will have time for questions and answers from you. And then we'll close out and provide next steps and ways that you can stay engaged in this project. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Christine at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Christine Hironaka. I'm the Senior Advisor for Energy for the Governor. So again, really appreciate everyone's time and attention on this very important matter. We have set some very ambitious clean energy and climate goals in California, and we're talking about to meet the carbon-free electricity by 2045 goal. We're talking about an unprecedented amount of new clean energy build. I'm talking 400% capacity increase in the next 2 decades. That's hundreds of projects that we're talking about each year. And we have a strong record that shows that we can do this. Last year, the state added more than 7,000 megawatts of new capacity to the grid. That took a lot of hard work by all involved, from local permitting entities, state regulating entities, communities, policymakers, developers, and more, all working in tandem towards this same goal. At the same time, we know that there are challenges that remain to achieve the scale and diversity of resources we need to meet our clean energy transition. And local permitting is one such area of challenge, but I also like to think of it as an opportunity to continue to work collaboratively to address new opportunities. So recognizing this, the state provided GO-Biz funding to undertake this clean energy permitting project initiative. So I'm super excited about the work that the team is doing and what is to come. And the goals of this project are to, one, understand the challenges and pain points of permitting large-scale energy projects faced by local governments, and provide best practices and tools and process improvements. And just, again, I want to let us jump into the meat of this, but, to achieve the energy system of the future, it will require us all to continue to work together and continue the momentum that we have so far. So I'll just conclude there. Again, want to give big thanks to the GO-Biz team here. And again, everyone for participating in today's webinar, but also all of your engagement leading to this and going forward. Your input and feedback are incredibly important to us and a critical part of our go forward. So thank you again. I look forward to learning more and hearing more of your perspectives. I think I'm passing to Molly now.
Thanks, Christine, for those remarks. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about the permitting initiative that we are in the middle of right now, just some background information and where we are. Next slide, please. So, Christine had mentioned we've set really ambitious, goals. And so to give you an idea of how we got to this process and why this is important is this slide right here kind of shows what the state has brought online so far in terms of new megawatts. And so over the past, since 2020, since the PUC started tracking this more closely, we have brought on about 24,000 megawatts of new resources. And it's broken out by resource type. So you can see, the number of megawatts that were brought on each year by, solar projects, storage, wind, geothermal. And so this is what we've done in the past. And in order to reach our carbon neutral electricity goals, we have to continue to stay the course. And so in 2025, next slide, please. This is a snapshot of what we're looking at for this year. So this is information based on what we've gathered from the CPUC information on projects under contract and information from the CAISO NRI list. And so what we're expecting to come online this year is about 6,800 megawatts of new resources. And what we have brought on so far is about almost 1,700. And so there is about a little over 5,000 megawatts remaining for the rest of the year. And the map kind of shows you where these projects are located by county. And so the county with the biggest number of megawatts that's expected to be deployed this year is in Kern, followed by San Diego, San Joaquin, and so forth. All of this information, most of this information is also available on our website. But this is to show what we're looking at and the magnitude of the growth of these projects in California. Next slide. And so this is information from the Public Utilities Commission as well. And so these is a look forward for 2026, 27, and 28. And as you can see, the growth continues. And so with that number of megawatts and projects that are expected to come online, there needs to be more streamlined processes so that these projects are deployed a little bit more quickly so that the state can, we're able to reach our goals. And so in 2026, as you can see, solar and battery makes up a majority of the projects that are expected to come online, both in 2026 and 2027. 2028 numbers, that will change. Some of these numbers will change as new information gets reported to the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide, please. And so, as Christine mentioned, one of the challenges to be able to scale these projects is permitting. So it's at the local, state, sometimes federal if it's on BLM land. And so, recognizing that, this permitting initiative was kicked off late last year to develop tools for local permitting authorities to help them improve their processes for siting and permitting these types of projects. And so the scope of the project is to look at onshore wind, large-scale solar, and battery storage systems. Next slide, please. So here is a timeline of the initiative. So from January to April, we did a lot of outreach to collect information on the challenges and pain points faced by local permitting authorities, developers, and understand how community-based organizations and tribes view and their thinking around large-scale energy projects. And so we developed a survey, which we sent to most of the local planning authorities to get their feedback on how much they're engaged in the permitting process, their experience and expertise, and better understand what are their pain points and what are the opportunities there are to improve their processes. And then from April to July, we're taking that information that we've collected so far to develop this toolkit of resources for local planning authorities to help them improve their processes. And then from July to November, we're planning to release a draft playbook, which would include our assessment report, what we've found through our data collection and some of the tools. So a draft playbook and toolkit will be released late summer for stakeholder feedback, and then with the final one in Q4, late Q4 2025. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more information about our outreach and the information we've collected. For the surveys, the online surveys that we had sent out, more than, almost 200 people completed that survey. And then we followed up with some interviews with some of the high priority local jurisdictions, with developers and community-based organizations as well, to delve a little bit deeper into some of these survey questions and get some more insights and information into what are the real challenges and better understand things that would be helpful for them if that tool was available. And we also did some other outreach. We held a webinar back in March and attended some in-person meetings to get people to provide their input into the survey. Next slide, please. All right, I will now turn it over to Suna to go over the findings from the data collection.
Thanks, Molly, and hello, everyone. My name is Suna Tamaz from GHD, and I will be highlighting the results of the surveys from both the planner's perspective as well as the developer's perspective in the next few slides. Go to the next slide, please. For both sets of stakeholders, we asked about the permitting process for large-scale, front-of-the-meter clean energy projects. And we asked about the process from the initial siting through to permit application and also to post-permit steps. We asked what were the key challenges and barriers in that process, what were some of the best practices used, and what resources, tools, or guidance either the planners or developers used that were helpful in the permitting process. This slide focuses on feedback that we received from the local permitting authorities. And for context, these are the local planners, and they have responsibilities across all types of projects, not just clean energy project permitting. They are typically part of a larger planning and permitting departments. They're handling inquiries during planning, they're handling zoning, reviewing applications, running procurements for third-party experts. They're facilitating and coordinating multiple agencies. The planners have many different responsibilities in their workload, and their experience with clean energy projects is therefore in the broader context of their job. When asked about what causes clean energy project-related workload issues, planners cited time-intensive permit reviews, which included multiple iterations of reviews for incomplete permits. 63.6% of planners occasionally rejected permits and requested rework or resubmission. This was due to finding issues of incompleteness, issues of non-compliance, or community concerns, which caused a need to rework the permit application. Moving to the second pie chart, 58.7% of planners felt that permits were occasionally delayed. The top causes cited for these delays included community concerns, appeals, and the planner's ability to obtain the information required to process the permit on time. And this information was either from the developer or other parties. Moving to the final pie chart, the planners were also asked what type of clean energy projects are most time-consuming to permit. BESS, battery energy storage systems, were cited as the most time-consuming to permit by 37% of planners. When asked why BESS was the most time-consuming, planners noted that confirming BESS safety requirements was a top concern, as well as community perceptions of BESS safety, as well as misconceptions about BESS safety. Next slide, please. We also asked developers about their key challenges in the permitting process, their involvement in clean energy projects, and what resources, tools, or guidance they found most helpful in interacting with localities to develop clean energy projects. In the surveys and interviews, as context, the majority of developers felt that permitting process delays that they had experienced could be avoided. For context, the developer is ostensibly looking for viable sites well in advance of filing a permit, and they're relying on different data to be able to minimize project risk and select the locality where they feel confident in the permitting process, confident in the timelines, and where they feel the locality is favorable towards clean energy projects. So let's move to the pie charts. We asked if developers anticipate any change in their involvement in clean energy projects in California. As you'll see, as you saw earlier, there's projections for increased activity. 54.2% of developers plan to increase their development activities. 8.3%, however, plan to decrease their developments. 29.2% did not plan to change their development activities, and 8.3% were unsure. We also asked developers whether the permitting process had ever been a factor in not pursuing renewable energy projects in a particular locality, and 79.3% said yes. The locality-specific permitting process had been a reason why a developer did not pursue clean energy developments in a particular locality. And this gets back to the role of the developer who is seeking to invest in projects that have minimized risk, where they can follow an established permitting process, be confident in project execution costs and project timelines. Next slide, please. We gathered the various best practice recommendations from the developer and permitting authority perspective, and we mapped them across the general steps in the clean energy project permitting process. And as part of ongoing work on this project, we will be detailing out each of these recommendations in a report and playbook to be published on the GO-Biz website. The recommendations were across different categories. Some were tools and resources that planners or developers are using today. Some were tools and resources that planners or developers have access to or wish they had access to. And some are tools and resources that they noted would be useful for another entity, a state entity, a local entity, or a third party to develop for everyone's use. We mapped these tools and resource recommendations across the permitting process from the pre-application stage, you'll see at the left of the slide, through to the permit application stage, and also through downstream to post-permit processes. And what both planners and developers wanted was consistency, and both stakeholders are seeking commonalities that are more efficiency, predictability, transparency, and reliability in the data, the documents, the timelines, and the process. I will highlight in each of those permitting phases a few of the items mentioned that were either valuable tools in use today or recommendations for tools. And so each of these will be highlighted on the GO-Biz website in more detail, but we're going through preliminary findings. So in the pre-permit application phase, all the way to the left, there's significant work on the developer side to identify a viable site, and also to understand the locality's application process. In the siting phase, the developer may have years head start on evaluating the right project sites across California. They're using geographic information systems or GIS tools to identify the most viable spots. Developers will look at the specific permitting process within localities, contact the planning desk, and gauge receptiveness of a clean energy project. The siting decision is a very important one for the developer, and they may have a year or more head start before an application hits a planner's desk. Some localities have put GIS-type feasibility maps online that can, in some cases, help make clear what some of those development opportunities are. The interesting point here is that there is a difference in timing between where the developer is in their process and when the permit application hits the desk of the planner. And so we are exploring how that siting could happen in a more coordinated fashion between developers and planners. Many permitting departments have a pre-application process as we move through the stages, where developers can meet with the planner and understand specific requirements. What some local planning departments have done is create a pre-application checklist for these meetings to help align with the developer on specific permitting requirements. Both developers and planners favor a permit by rule type process, which is a streamlined approach to permitting, where if the project meets specific outline criteria, it's considered to have the necessary authorizations and create less administrative burden. In the permitting application section of the process, both planners and developers favor filing permits in an automated way, such as an e-permitting system, and a completeness check to verify from both parties' perspective that the permit is complete and to save rework. Both planners and developers recommend a locality-specific clean energy guidebook and clean energy specific documented processes that they could both reference for a clear understanding as well as for education and training purposes. Moving through the stages in the environmental review process, there was discussion on both CEQA and California Department of Fish and Wildlife processes. There was a high understanding of CEQA processes and requirements. There was less understanding of CDFW processes, which caused timeline and process uncertainty for developers. On the subject of environmental consultants or other third-party experts, both developers and planners used consultants, and we noted that planners acknowledged that finding the right experts and running the procurement was an additional task for them. For community engagement and benefits, the planners had various approaches to review community benefits. Some had a robust process and some localities did not. Developers found that the most favorable localities understood the clear linkage between economic benefits such as jobs, as well as the project's contribution to energy resiliency, as well as the project's contributions to environmental benefits. Moving to the other permitting process as part of the permit application, it's not just the local planner. There's interactions with other local, state, and sometimes federal agencies as well. Both planners and developers desired a central place to have those contact lists. Planners especially were interested in a forum to be able to ask questions and troubleshoot technical details that may arise as part of the permitting process. including a cross-agency forum or ombudsman to resolve any permitting delays. Another area mentioned for a desire for tools was interactive fact sheets to help planners engage with both the public and the media on communicating the clean energy project. Moving to the post-permit application process, while this was not in scope for our project and we did not dive deep into the area, it was recognized that beyond the initial permitting phase, there are additional requirements, building permits, construction, final inspection, commissioning, and even project decommissioning. And surfacing concerns relevant to these steps was also important to the planners, the locality, the community, and the developer so that the project lifecycle requirements are well understood and to plan for success. So we will also highlight some of these in our recommendations. Finally, planners and developers recognize that the permitting process can take a year, can take more than a year. Codes can change in that time, and both parties desired a method to more clearly flag these changes. If you look at the entire permitting process, there were various tools used and recommendations from both the planner's side and the developer's side, and we will go into these in the next few slides. And as mentioned, we will be providing more of a detail as well as examples of each of the recommendations and how they're in place today as part of this project. And with that, I will turn it over to Lakshmi.
Thanks, Suna. Hi, everybody. My name is Lakshmi Alagapan, and I'm with E3, which is part of the project team alongside GHD supporting this effort. As Suna discussed, we heard the need for many types of resources to support local permitting authorities in being able to accelerate their clean energy permitting processes. I'm going to talk about 5 of those priority resources that we'll be developing as part of this initiative. So through our outreach, we heard that one of the top resources that was requested from LPAs were model ordinances to facilitate more streamlined permitting of clean energy technologies. And this is especially true for battery energy storage resources, given the pace at which technical guidance around fire safety is evolving. Ordinances are important because they allow LPAs to send strong signals for their clean energy siting preferences, which in turn can help developers with finding sites that align with local preferences, ideally accelerating permitting. It's also important to note, though, that over 80% of the developers that we spoke with noted that existing restrictive ordinances, zoning codes, and moratoria were a significant barrier to development. And so being able to address the pain points and ordinances from both perspectives is important. And so to address the feedback that we heard from both LPs and developers, the toolkit is going to be providing model ordinances for solar, onshore wind, and battery storage. The ordinances are currently under development and they're being workshopped with stakeholders through focus groups. And the goal is that we'll have some consistency with how ordinances across LPAs look like, and that that should help with streamlining clean energy permitting across the state. The model ordinances are pre-drafted documents, and they can be adopted or tailored by local permitting authorities to support their permitting processes. They are not required to be adopted by LPAs, but the idea is that the work that we're undertaking now to develop those ordinances can help LPAs by providing a template or a really strong starting point for them to eventually adopt an ordinance. In addition to the ordinance language itself, we're also developing a guide to go alongside the ordinance that is going to provide background information on each component of the model ordinance to provide context around specific topics or options that might be presented in the ordinance. And this is really meant to provide the research and resources for LPAs to get comfortable with adopting or tailoring the ordinances for their localities, and hopefully in the end saves them some time from having to do that work on their own. So we will be having a webinar on the ordinance. Actually, we're going to have several of them in late July and August, so encourage you all that are interested to tune in for them later this summer. We go to the next slide. The next area of findings is around the pre-application phase. And so LPAs and developers both noted that having checklists of what is required for clean energy permitting in their localities would be helpful. So for LPAs that were new to permitting, they thought this could be really useful. And then for developers who are permitting projects in new locations, they thought that could also be helpful as requirements vary across different local permitting authorities. To support this ask, we're developing land use permit application checklists that can be used as a template for LPAs to start from as they develop their application checklists. And we know that the requirements are going to vary by jurisdiction, but again, a good portion of the process is similar across jurisdictions. And so we're hoping that this will help streamline the process with LPAs really using their time to tailor as needed. If LPAs are then able to provide tailored checklists for their processes, we think this can help avoid incomplete applications, which, as Suna discussed earlier, we heard is one of the top reasons for applications getting delayed and permits getting issued. So hopefully this is another way to streamline and accelerate the process. So the toolkit is going to be providing a checklist that LPAs can use as a starting point, and it's going to include things like, it's going to include everything that a developer would need to include in their application. So things like project overviews, site control plans, fire safety requirements and plans, environmental reviews, etc. And so it'll sort of be that comprehensive list of everything that needs to be included in an application. If we go to the next slide. The next finding is related to permit reviews. So as you can see, 56% of the local permitting authorities that we heard from indicated that their staff had really limited experience with renewable energy. And as we heard from Suna earlier, many LPAs don't have dedicated staff just for permitting clean energy. They're also permitting many other things and working on a number of other topics. So the lack of experience permitting renewables specifically, coupled with heavy staff workloads, poses barriers to timely clean energy permitting. And so when we talked with LPAs, they indicated interest in having their planners build up their renewable energy technical knowledge, and having resources to support that could be useful. So to address this feedback, we are developing a guidebook for planners that provides background on renewable energy in California. And so it's going to include details on the development and permitting process, relevant legislation and policy, and it's also going to include technology-specific chapters that provide overviews of each technology, including the different types of benefits and impacts that they might have on a community. And so the idea here is that the guidebook can help local planners build their knowledge and get comfort with clean energy technologies, and eventually become better equipped to address concerns that they hear are raised by community members through the permitting process. Next slide. Another top area that we heard from across actually all stakeholders, so LPAs, developers, and community-based organizations, they all noted that resources would be helpful related to community engagement. Local community acceptance of energy projects is really critical to accelerate clean energy development in the state. Not all communities welcome clean energy projects because of a number of factors, like completing land use for things like agriculture, potential environmental impacts from various projects, visual impacts, and definitely recently as well, lots of fear of fire risk from battery projects. And so to address these concerns, articulating the benefits that clean energy projects bring to communities will be really important to garner support from the local communities. And so we are developing a community benefits guidebook, which does just that. It's meant to provide an overview of the beneficial impacts of clean energy projects that can have on communities, and explains the different frameworks that can be utilized to realize those benefits. The overarching goal is to really provide, is to support both clean energy development and local communities, and recognizing that those two objectives can end up being at odds if not approached in the right way. And so the wrong approaches can potentially increase red tape and slow down permitting, but the right approaches result in less local opposition and allows projects to earn the social license to operate and support communities. And so the guide is going to work to articulate what some of those successful approaches look like. I think it's important to note, though, that every locality is different, and so it's going to be important to have flexibility in being able to tailor benefits based on each community's needs and preferences. And this is something that we are going to be discussing in August. So we'll have a webinar on the Community Benefits Guide, and also encourage people to join for that if you're interested in learning more. Next slide. And in sort of the other permitting process support, something that we heard as localities begin to permit more clean energy resources is having access to educational materials and information to share with the public could be really helpful. They noted that they often get pushback from local communities over health and safety of these technologies, and they think that additional information from trusted source like the state could help with educating the public and building that trust and comfort with citing clean energy technologies locally. This is especially true for battery energy storage, which has drawn a lot of community concerns over fire safety. And so to support this need, we're developing a suite of fact sheets for each technology. So there will be a fact sheet on solar, on onshore wind, and on battery storage, which will include information on what these technologies are, and addressing technology-specific risks and concerns head-on. So things like fire safety for BESS, land use for solar, and misconceptions related to wind turbines for wind. And so the goal here is that the local permitting authorities can utilize these fact sheets as they engage with their communities to help address concerns related to these types of resources and work to sort of build comfort and trust with these technologies amongst their communities. And with that, I will pause and turn it over to Grace.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just give a quick reminder about Q&A. If you have questions about any of the material in this presentation, here is the link to our Q&A platform. So go ahead and take a picture with your phone or use this link. I think we'll pause here for just a moment to give people another chance to enter their questions.
And Grace, we've also added small versions of the QR code onto the rest of the deck. If you're, as you watch it, you'll see on the lower left-hand side of your screen.
Awesome. Yeah, so while folks are thinking through their questions and uploading those, I'll just briefly go over a first look at our website where all these awesome tools will be housed, and first look at the playbook as well. So yeah, GO-Biz has our own website, and this permitting initiative has its own dedicated page on our website. The URL is up there at the top, but you can also just Google GO-Biz and see if you can navigate and find it there. But yeah, so our landing page for the permitting initiative right now, it just houses our timeline for all of the efforts going on that we went over previously, as well as information on upcoming webinars and events. So all of the upcoming webinars we're going to have on the tools that are soon to come out will be listed on this web page once we have those registration links and everything ready to go. So please head over to that website for all that information. And yeah, we'll have lots of resources on this page, including the toolkit and all of the other resources that everybody's talked about housed on this page. And as for a quick first look, if you want to go to the next slide. This is something of what the guidebook will look like. We're in draft mode right now, as we talked about before, but we are working really hard to put all these resources together, putting our heads down and going through a lot of edits. And we're very excited to get these resources out into the world. So we're also really looking forward to getting feedback from all of you now and in the future. As we mentioned, we'll have a draft version of this out before we finalize it later this year. So yeah, we will be sharing this slide deck out so you can access the link to know where all these resources will be living. But again, you can find them on GO-Biz's website. And if you navigate to our industries and then click on your preferred sector, you'll find our page. So yeah, and I think we're going to be moving on to Q&A. So yeah.
Sorry, just looking for the unmute button. Thanks so much, Grace. Yeah, so we have that QR code there, and we're starting to get some questions in. So we'll stay on this slide if anybody wants to share their comments or questions at this time. We do have one regarding fact sheets about hydrogen. Well, I'll start with the first. First questions are asking about, will these slides be shared out or recording? And we will be sharing out the recording and the slides to the attendees here. I'll ask the team if they have any plans to post recordings and materials to the website from this webinar.
Yes, the answer is yes. We will be posting all the materials on our website for this webinar, as well as previous webinars and future ones. So all of that information can be found there.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so that question, the other question was, will we be developing fact sheets for hydrogen energy development? And I will ask our panel if they have any comments.
Thanks, Amanda. No, right. Oh, sorry, Molly. Did you want to take that?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was to say, right now we're just focused on the 3 technologies that I mentioned. So solar, onshore wind, and battery storage is the focus of this initiative. And so the toolkit is primarily focused on those, and the fact sheets will also be for those 3 technologies.
Great, thank you very much. And then there's another, it's more of a comment, so I'll share it. And the person has noted, we have companies meeting with us early in the process, and PGE seems to be driving the location more than risk. The sites tend to be environmentally sensitive areas and have lots of planning hurdles to overcome. So definitely risky sites so far, they are noting. Not sure if anybody wants to follow up to that comment, Dismore.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. But if you would like to provide some additional background or information or talk to us further about that, feel free to reach out to the energy unit. It's our email. I think it will be on the next slide.
Great, thanks, Molly. And so far, that's all the questions we have in our queue, but I'll give the audience another moment to post their questions in. Oh, one more. Okay, this one. So they're wondering additional ways that we might use some of the findings from this research. For example, will any of the interviews or survey responses be published somewhere? They may help in terms of an advocacy perspective to have some of this data.
Yeah, the findings will be included in the final report or part of the playbook. So it won't be individual responses or anything like that, but it'll be summarized, similar to what we went through the slide deck. However many people responded, so and so said this, etc. And then there'll be I think a page somewhere in the final playbook attributing to all those who had contributed. So not by name necessarily, but the organization that they're with. For example, if Monterey County responded to the survey and participated in an interview or a focus group that we conducted on behalf of this initiative, then they'll be recognized.
Great, thanks, Molly. Okay, a couple more questions. So what system sizes will this playbook apply to? And I'm assuming they mean by megawattage or?
Yeah, I can maybe take this one. Right now, the playbook is generally targeted towards utility scale projects. And so while we don't have an exact cutoff, we're kind of working through that in some of our ordinance development right now. This is definitely sort of larger scale projects.
Great, thank you. And then there's another question in, so referring to Senate Bill 1420, Caballero 2024, added hydrogen and non-combustion biomass to project streamlining. And the question is, so why isn't this project including those resources, given the 2024 scoping plan projects, a 1,700-fold increase in the need for hydrogen? Who on our panel wants to hop in on that one?
Yeah, I can take that. So I'm not familiar with that bill, but it looks like it was passed in 2024. This initiative, even though it was kicked off in 2024, the legislation behind it started way before that. And so we were looking at some of the areas that we were more familiar with that are expected to come online, that we are already developing. And additionally, there is another effort with hydrogen. And so we decided to narrow the scope to battery storage, solar, and onshore wind.
Great, thank you. There's one more question I see about the possibility of decommissioning certain BESS projects, possibly impacting the development of future projects. But I'm unclear which particular projects they're referring to.
I can begin an answer and then also pass it off to Lakshmi. And actually, just for the other comments on our webinars, as well as on this one, the comment has been raised about what about other sources of renewable. This project scope was specifically the areas mentioned: onshore wind, solar, and BESS. That being said, there's also hybrid projects that take on, one or more of those, right? Solar and BESS, for example, or wind and BESS. Other clean energy projects have been mentioned, hydrogen and others. And so when we looked at what the planner's responsibilities are, clean energy permitting is just one type of what they're doing. And so the guidance that we hope to release is help with specifications around clean energy permitting. While it's specific to onshore wind, solar, and BESS, the findings can be applied to different technologies. Having a documented process, having a timeline, having a list of contacts, having a model ordinance. So we're hopeful that the findings can be applied to the range of clean energy permitting issues. And then I'll talk a little bit about the decommissioning, but then I'll hand it off to probably Lakshmi on this one. So, our scope was up to the permit application process. How can we help accelerate? What would planners appreciate and developers appreciate to accelerate the initial permit approval process? That being said, there are considerations. These projects last their project lifetime, and there's a life cycle. And there have been concerns about what that decommissioning process looks like as well. Even before getting to the decommissioning process, there's the construction process, and there's fire review, for example, and building review. And sometimes those applications don't land on the approver's desk or the reviewer's desk until much later down in the process. And so our recommendations are about surfacing those types of things that folks downstream of the process may not be an official approver at the front ends, but if this is information of what they're looking for that can be daylighted earlier on in the process, so everyone is aware of what those requirements are. With that, Lakshmi, if you'd like to speak about potential issues around decommissioning of BESS projects.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you touched on some of what I would have said, Suna. Decommissioning is definitely something that is important to a number of communities, and that definitely has come through in the outreach that we've done so far. As part of the model ordinances and guidebook that we're developing, we do have decommissioning requirements as part of that. And it's also something that we know developers typically are aware of and have plans for to receive their conditional use permits. So it's definitely something that will be addressed through some of the tools that we are putting together. There's also sections in some of our fact sheets that address decommissioning, given that that's part of the education that we want to be providing to the public and showing, that these projects have plans, for when they have to get decommissioned, and that they won't be sort of impacting communities beyond that.
Okay, thank you for those responses on how these will provide some resources around decommissioning and asset management in general of these types of projects as well. So the questions have slowed down. I think that's where we're at the moment. I'll give folks another moment if they have something new that they want to ask our panel about. All right, well, I'll ask our panelists if they have any comments they'd like to provide before we wrap things up here a little earlier than the middle of the hour. No takers. Okay, I guess it's getting close to lunchtime. All right, I will pass back to you, Molly, for closing comments.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in today and giving up part of your lunchtime to, for this webinar. We will be holding additional webinars during the summer. I think Lakshmi had mentioned that these webinars will delve into each of the recommended tools that we're developing, such as, specific model ordinances or templates, guides, and things like that. So that information, if you are signed up for any of the this webinar or previous webinar, you'll get information about that, and we'll also have that information on our website as well. And if you have any questions or want to get a hold of us, feel free to email us. Our contact information is there on that last slide. And this getting stakeholder feedback and input into this process is really important to us. We want to be able to hear and have everybody give the opportunity to everyone to be able to provide comment. So if you're those webinars during the summer, we'll post that information when we have the dates nailed down, and information on how to sign up. And then again, for just timeline purposes, in the end of the summer, we'll probably have a draft playbook and toolkit out for comments. And we're hoping to do a lot of outreach to present and get additional feedback from a wider audience on that as well, with the final to be put out in November, December.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.